Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. So, the intro montage, I went ahead and showed the last little bit of this manifold, which this is an SRT-4 T4 twin scroll top mount that will soon be listed on the website. So, or maybe it'll even be listed on the website by the time this video is released. If it is, check the comments below, the pinned comment, it will be listed there. If not, then by the time the next video is up, it will be completed. But what we're going to start on with this episode is working on the Mark II's engine bay. So the man, the myth, the legend, Dave, has came over here, and him being the excellent painter that he is going to knock out and fix a couple of things that I did on this. So I had a couple of runs and a couple of dry spots. You can see some of the runs there, and there's a dry spot, I think on the back side of that strut tower, maybe on this one as well. But Dave is going to come in here. We got some fresh materials. Dave brought a whole bunch of stuff of his own over here, and he's going to fix me up right with this thing and get it dialed in and beautiful in the spots that I was unable to achieve. So I guess without further ado, let's get set up with a time lapse and watch Dave do his thing. So after a bit of sanding and scuffing and everything else, Dave's doing some final masking before he's going to respray this portion of the firewall right here, and we're going to end up doing both of the strut towers, as there were some things on there he didn't like, so he's going to use his professional experience and skills to get them squared away for me. So he's being the lord of the tape right now, getting all that plastic tacked into place and everything. And then the next few minutes, we'll go ahead, start laying some new color down, and then some clear after that. Dave got the color sprayed down in the Mark II's engine bay, and as we're sitting here looking at it, and we've been sitting letting this dry for probably about an hour at this point in time, we're still seeing some bits of it kind of down in these crevices here that appears to still be a little bit wet. And we came to the consensus that rather than trying to rush the clear coat portion of this, we're going to let the paint dry for a few days first, just to make sure we don't have anything weird happen with the clear when it goes down on top of the base coat. And in the next few days, Dave will stop back out, spray the clear down on it, and once the clear dries up, then we can finish, or rather he can finish the wet sanding and the buffing, getting this thing shining beautifully. But he did a wonderful job laying down the paint. It's all nice and even, beautiful coat, and I can't wait to see what this looks like under clear. Dave, my friend, you are a magician. Today, I'm going to get started on the intercooler tubes for Dave's SRT-4. So now that the intake manifold and the throttle body situation is squared away, I can now move on to the actual plumbing work, and that is where this pile of aluminum, this small stack, all those couplers and T-bolt clamps right there, that's where all of that stuff comes into play. So I think the way that I'm going to do this is bring the compressor outlet down underneath of the engine, and I think over to this side of the intercooler here, and then this side of the intercooler will make its way up to the throttle body. I think that's how I'm going to do it, because that leaves kind of this pocket in this area right here that this tube can snake down, make its way into the intercooler port, and it leaves a bunch of room over on this side to kind of snake a tube around, make its way into here. I finished the modifications on Dave's intercooler, and I have a tech tip for you guys. So, if you'll notice on both of the intercooler ports, I went ahead and I welded a bead as close to the edge of the tubes as I possibly could. So, I know it looks a little bit goofy, but there's a good reason for it. So, something like this, where the inlet or outlet, they're fixed to the intercooler, and I didn't want to deal with trying to cut these off to put new tube stubs on because of all the bracketry and everything else here. This is a quick, easy, and frankly, a dirty solution to applying a bead roll to the tube. So, in addition to not being able to put new tubing on this, it isn't practical or realistic to expect to be able to run this whole intercooler through a bead roller, and on this side here it's frankly impossible. So the quick easy solution for this is to come in and weld a bead along the side of it, and if I can get you guys the right perspective, something like that right there, you can see that there is a pretty nice little bead there that the T-bolt clamp can actually grab onto and make sure the coupler stays attached where it needs to. So if you have the option or the opportunity to actually bead roll something, obviously do that, but in a situation like this where I didn't really have another option, this is a perfectly acceptable and sufficient way to do this. Today I'm going to begin on Dave's intercooler tubing. So I'm going to start with the cold side tube, which will go from this side of the intercooler up to the throttle body, if you can see it up there. So I have both of the couplers on, 3-inch straight coupler here, and then a 4-inch, 3-inch transitional coupler up on the throttle body. And now we're just tasked with going from point A to point B. So this cold side tube is where both the blow-off valve and the IAT bung will be placed as well, which we'll figure out the locations for those later. All the features on Dave's cold side intercooler tube are installed, and I am now at the point where I can punch the hole in the tube for the blow-off valve. So, you can see the IAT bung right there, and the blow-off valve flange. You can see that there is no hole for it currently. So what I like to do is weld the flange on first, and then punch the hole in it secondly, and then come in with a carbide burr, which you can see this is a nice aggressive aluminum carbide burr, and I will tailor the hole to fit perfectly to the inside of that flange, and then come in with either cartridge rolls or flap wheels to smooth everything out and port it and make it beautiful and flow well and all of that happiness. Dave's cold side intercooler tube is now completed. So it's fastened in place, the blow-off valve is in place. If you guys can see the little connector, the IAT sensor is in place, all of the couplers and clamps and everything are in place, and I could not be happier with the way that this came out. Everything fits nicely, and it also leaves plenty of space for the hot side tube that will have to come through this slot right here. And I had to be a little bit cognizant of where I put the blow-off valve just for the sake of that hot side tube, but I think I should have plenty of room to make that fit, make that happen, and I'm just really stoked with the way that this came out. So the blow-off valve is in a spot where it's easily accessible for lines and for everything else. The IAT sensor is in a location so it won't look funny, and won't have to do anything weird to get the wiring harness down to it, and it will still look aesthetically correct, and it won't be unsightly, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But this tube is easy to get in and out of the car, and I think we'll need to remake this lower radiator hose, but that's no big deal. The most important thing is that the intercooler tube fits, and I left enough room so that lower radiator hose can be reworked. But the tube sits up high and leaves enough clearance for whatever he's going to do for a crank trigger, and it sits up high enough so we'll be able to clear the belly pan that I'll end up building for this. So all in all, pretty great success. I'll send Dave a few photos here in a few minutes, see what he thinks of it, and the next thing to do will be to knock out the hot side tube. I have the first section of Dave's hot side intercooler tube cut and ready to be bead rolled. So how I bead roll tubes is with this contraption right here. And this is from good old Harbor Freight, and you can see the item number and everything else there. And while this bead roller is really designed to be used with sheet metal to put, kind of intricate designs on flat panels, I modified it to work with tubing, and this is what I use to make my bead rolls for intercooler coupler, silicone coupler setups for intercooler tubing. So what I modified is on the back side here, I put this piece of thick angle iron along the back side, and that prevents the top and bottom half that house the top and bottom roller from deflecting one way or another. As I kind of ran into some issues with that when I initially got this piece, but with that angle iron in place, all is well. And I went ahead and made a simple base for it with a piece of stainless tubing. You can see I had one bolt break off, but put a second bolt in. This is a set bolt to go onto this pedestal mount. And I just welded the thing directly to it, and it's been working perfectly ever since. So this is pretty straightforward. You have a set bolt, or I guess a tension bolt or something like that on the top. And all that you do is raise the top roller up. And I use this bottom half of the bead roller as kind of a depth stop. And I just go ahead and tighten down this clamping bolt here. And then I begin rotating. And I just keep an eye to make sure that I have the piece of tubing riding up against that bottom side. You can see the outline of the bead being put in there. And I will just tighten and rotate, and so on and so forth, until I get a bead as defined as I would like. So, this is round 3. And we're pretty close. I'll do one last little nudge. And that seems pretty adequate to me. So then you go ahead, loosen it up, pull your piece out, and there you can see the bead that we have. And it's pretty nice. That'll hold a coupler perfectly fine. And this piece between it grinding the aluminum on this bottom side and what have you, it typically puts up a little bit of debris or a little bit of a burr along the bottom side. I'll go over and run it on the belt sander, take that off, re-deburr the inside of it, and then this is ready to go into service. First section of Dave's hot side intercooler tube is completed, installed in the car, and I'm ready to start working on the second section. So, the first section, you can see from the compressor outlet there, comes down, shoots the gap between the subframe and the steering rack, follows along through this channel, and you can see the little mounting bracket right up there, and I had the option to make 2 little mounting brackets, but I think 1 will be sufficient for this. So that's what we went with. And it ends off at this coupler. So next, I need to go from here to here. And you can see that I have 1 little section of tubing right here, 1 right there. And I started playing around with some angles and some bends. And you can see my collection of different portions of bends and so on and so forth. And this is going to be a little bit tight and a little bit tricky to make it work. And I'd really like to keep this 120, 150 degree bend, whatever it is, because if you look down here, I really like the way that that tube kind of swoops like that. I think it looks really cool and organic, but I just need to go from here over to here. The second half of Dave's hot side intercooler tube is now fabricated and ready to weld. So in the car, this is what we are looking at. So we have long radius bend and short radius bend, and we'll get to that here in a moment. Then long radius sliver, and then that whole 120, 150 degree bend, whatever. One coupler here, one coupler there. Everything fits up nicely. Everything sits in place the way that it should. And I'm pretty happy with the end result. So that short radius bend, I had to do something that I don't like doing, and that was cut up one of the old parts for my Supra. So the hot side intercooler tube for it was comprised of two vibrant tight radius 3-inch 90s and then a long radius bend going into the actual Wiggins flange. So I sat and played around with this and tried everything I possibly could with long radius bends, and the geometry just was not working out. So I had to scavenge this bend off of my old intercooler tube. As I looked up, and at my warehouse, the 3-inch tight radius bends are out of stock, and we don't really have time to sit and wait for them to come in stock. So I went ahead, stole that from myself, put it in here, and now the tube fits. All is well. We have clearance, albeit just ever so slightly. There is clearance between this tube and the transmission there. Clearance all the other way around, and this thing's ready to weld up. Well, this was a good few days worth of work over here in the shop. I'm very happy that Dave was able to come out and get the Mark II engine bay squared away, or at least begin with that process. So, quick little once over of what we're looking like. Absolutely beautiful, and everything laid down very nicely. And although we were planning on laying clear down as part of this video, we sprayed a little coupon and figured out that Steelit really wants some additional time to dry. So you can see kind of the wrinkle finish on this piece right here. I'm really glad that we sprayed this piece prior to spraying the whole engine bay with clear and having this wrinkled texture across everything in here. We're going to give this a few more days and wait and see exactly how much time it'll take to let this dry. We actually sprayed a couple of them, so have this one as well that I'm letting sit for a few additional days, and I'll spray it sometime this upcoming week and see how it reacts to the clear coat at that point in time. Now, another little small note that I wanted to make: with cans of Steelit, they come factory with these red nozzles on them, and we switched out for this black one. Now, it may be difficult to see on camera. I'll do my best right here. But if you can see the orifice of this red nozzle as opposed to the orifice of this black nozzle, you can see how much smaller the black one is, and it also offers a better spray pattern than the nozzle or the tip that comes with these cans factory. So why that makes a difference, you can play with your fan pattern, have a more controllable spray that comes out of the can, and we figured out that you can swap the nozzles out on these cans. The diameter right here will allow you to run one of these SEM nozzles on these cans, and it makes it much better if you're trying to actually do precise work. So things to keep in mind if you're using Steal-It: give it a lot of time to dry, and swap the nozzle out if you're doing any fine detailed work. But with all of that being said, I think that'll be about the end of this episode. So made really good progress on Dave's car, made really good progress on the Mark II, and now we come over here, you can see that I am getting things together to take this thing to the dyno. Without me rambling on anymore, let's go ahead and wrap this one up. So thank you guys as always for coming along on all these different journeys and adventures and projects and everything here. I'm having a lot of fun doing all this stuff. I hope that you guys are enjoying yourselves and coming along for the ride with me. I'm really happy to have you along. It makes my day, it warms my heart, all of that, that you guys take time out of your days to come along on all this stuff with me, and I just hope you're having a good time, because I know that I sure am. But without rambling on anymore, let's go ahead and wrap this one up. So, as always, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. Be sure to check the website for manifolds, merch, and all that stuff. And I'll see you guys in the next episode.